Welcome to the Big Mike Fun Podcast, where you learn about advanced wealth building strategies from real estate investing to creating massive ROI and secured retirement profits. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, grab a notepad, and lean in. Because Big Mike has got the mic, starting now.
Welcome to the Big Mike Fun Podcast. I'm the Big Mike Zlatnik, and today it is my pleasure and a privilege to welcome Doug Smith. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
How's Houston, Texas?
A little cold lately, but not too bad compared to other parts of the country. I like living here. Very good economy, lots of real estate deals we can do. So no complaints.
That's awesome. Yeah, Houston and Dallas are like the two fastest growing markets in the country, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Tell us a little bit about you. We met at a conference, just tell me a little bit about what you do. You do something really unique, but before that, your family, married, kids, cats, pets, whatever works.
Recently married last year, have two French bulldogs. So those would be the children. Have been in real estate for the last 20 years after leaving the world of software development. That's why I moved here to Houston, is to work as a software developer. Lived in Spain and Chile. Something interesting I've heard you ask on other podcasts. I lived in Spain and Chile in the year 2016 and have a few interesting stories from my time there. But yeah, that's sort of a high level overview.
Yeah, that's cool. You're welcome to share one quick one. Anything really?
I'll give you a quick one. For the first few months I was in Spain, I was ordering una coca. Every time I would want a soft drink, I wanted Coke. And they would always give me a funny look. And they would like talk to their managers to try to figure out what I really wanted. Then they would serve me a Coke. I later learned that it's Coca-Cola, means Coke. And Coca by itself is cocaine. I ordered cocaine at countless restaurants in Spain.
That's wow. That is.
I've got a few more, but we need to cover real estate stuff.
That's amazing. Well, language differences, yes,
yes.
It's pretty. Little bit of a difference, just a little bit.
Oh, just a little bit.
All right, let's talk about real estate. So let's talk about what you do in Texas. So you buy land and you subdivide, you sell, or you buy land at a discount and you sell and sell a financing, and you got a whole business. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my team and I guess we have about 15 team members at this point. We go out there and we buy large tracts of rural land, usually outside of Houston, maybe about an hour outside. It's pretty common. We will subdivide those into usually 10, 13, 15 acre ranchettes, and we will sell those on owner financing to people who want a place to live out in the country, to individuals. We also improve them before we sell them. We bring in water, power, a driveway, culverts, fencing, a gate, things like that, sometimes a pond, to sort of get the property ready for them. And they're going to go in and they're going to put in a manufactured home, or they're going to have a home built.
Very cool. So the business is buy in bulk, sell piecemeal, and it's basically land improvement business, right? That's what you're doing.
Yes. Buying in bulk and selling in small pieces generally works out. You can sell the small pieces for more than what you bought in bulk. And yes, we are adding value. We're changing the use from agricultural to residential. So obviously that would help us to sell for a lot more as a result.
That's right. And so you're buying not infill lots, you're buying generally, as you said, 30, 40 minutes away from big city.
Yeah, the one recent purchase was a rice field. These are ranches, things of that sort, just mostly farmland.
Gotcha. Very cool. And then you have a fund that finances these for multi-year, I guess, holds, because you're holding them. What kind of financing you provide to these folks as they buy it? How many years they have to pay you off?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Well, of late we're selling over a 20-year period, 10.9% interest. And usually,
is it interest only or fully amortized?
It's fully amortized over 20 years. A lot of our buyers, they do think the 10.9% is high, so they plan to pay it off early, but a lot of times they never get around to paying it off early.
Gotcha. Because it's not that trivial to finance with a bank. They basically have to find alternative source of money, or maybe if they build a home on a property, then they can get a bank loan. I'm just curious.
They could go to a bank and they could refinance out. A lot of times the reason they were willing to buy on owner financing in the first place is because they don't like working with banks, or they're missing one or two pieces of documentation that a bank would require. So that current problem could still be in place several years later.
Yeah, I got you. And it's a rural land. I don't know if Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, any of those programs provide. They usually want a home on a property, right? They want to see something that it's an owner occupied. So you got to have a home. If you don't have a home, how can you get a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan?
Right, but a lot of times a year or two later, they do have a home there. But
Gotcha.
a lot
So
of
they
them,
can refi at that point.
yes, we've flown over in helicopters and drones, and we've looked at what they're doing later on, and yes, and they do have structures there, and they could refi, assuming their finances are in order.
Makes total sense. So your fund business is basically your fund finances at 10.9, and then I guess your fund makes, I think we talked in the past, like 10%, and you basically landed at 10.9. You just keep a little arbitrage for putting it together, and then the fund just gets yield to your investors, right? Is that how it works?
Right. I borrow from the fund at 10%. And yes, the fund, the people that go into the fund, they do serve as lenders. The fund is an LLC. It gets first liens on the land that we buy and the owner finance notes that we generate. It's got a loan against our loan, basically, on those.
Yeah, gotcha. So the fund lends to you, you lend to your borrowers, and the fund's collateral, say fund actually records a deed of trust, right, on a property.
Yes, and there's a collateral transfer of note and lien. So if we don't pay the fund, then the fund could foreclose on that, and they would collect directly from whoever bought the ranchette.
Oh, I see. So it's an assignment, right? So the fund is the beneficiary of the beneficiary of deed of trust.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yes, in that case, a fund investor would be a couple of steps away from actually having to own the rural land. And I say having to own it because once you own it, then you have to resell it again and turn it into a cash flow producing asset again.
That's right. So this is a little different from other guys that we do business with, discount lots, but this is unique. This is niche. This is a little different from the point of view that you sell to folks actually that want to build some of the property. I assume they're buying it to, as you said, put manufacture a mobile home on it, or what else they do? What are the use cases? What do people do with these lots?
Well, a lot of times they want it to be a weekend place. I was referencing discount lots. They go out and I think they usually buy at a discount. We don't usually get that big of a discount when we buy, because we buy a lot of these properties off the MLS. What we're doing is we're changing the use and adding value in other ways to create those margins. And so just wanted to cover that real quick. And then to answer your question, what do people do? Well, they spend the weekends usually there at first. They hang out with their family. And then their plan usually is over time to spend more and more time there and eventually retire there. That's what we hear the most of. And they all do something a little different. Like a lot of these people are blue collar. That's our target buyer. Sometimes they'll park their big rig out there. They'll have a tractor out there. They'll build a barn. Then what else? They'll have animals that their dogs run around, ride around on ATVs. They'll put a pool in, build a fire pit. And then some of our buyers are in sort of a different category. They want to put a business out there. We're seeing more and more of that. And so that could be any sort of blue collar business you could imagine.
Really interesting. Didn't realize that people do so much with that land. How many acres typically, if you buy and then you subdivide, how big is their purchase? What are they buying? An acre, 2 acres? What kind of ranchette are they buying?
They're usually buying 10 to 15 acres.
Wow, it's actually a lot of land. It's not like
actually, yeah. When you go out there, it's pretty impressive.
Living in the city, I mean, an acre to me is a lot. It's a lot of land. Again, I'm in New York City, so an acre is worth many millions of dollars here.
Right. If you go out there, actually, these are smaller compared to the other properties that are for sale, and that's how we feel sort of a need in the market. is our buyers go out there and look, and everything that's for sale is 1, 2, 300 acres, and then they can see, oh, I can buy 10 acres from this company, and so they come to us.
Yeah, makes sense. On 10 acres, you could have a lot. I mean, like it's 10 football fields size, right? An acre is a football field. So if you think about it, 10 acres is quite a lot of land, and you may have trees, you may have other stuff that I guess you could enjoy kind of country lifestyle, right?
Right, that's true. And so the land with more trees, as long as it's not totally covered in trees, that sells for more. Generally, people like those features. If it's got a pond, we can sell it for more. Just the prettier it is, and also the closer in it is to town, we can sell it for more. So
yeah, makes total sense. Of course, proximity. It's
yes.
And it's really interesting. I was chatting with another introduction to a son of a good friend, and he does something really interesting too. He buys land and with timber. He wants the trees. He wants the trees now, especially now. Timber is in high demand. So if you have a lot of timber on your property, he actually sells the timber off to folks who are building, I guess, homes, the mills, the timber mills. So it's kind of interesting, even though the land might be covered with a lot of trees, that those trees becomes an interesting asset if they can be sold to someone who needs timber.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We actually bought one property from a timber company who I guess never got around to harvesting the timber. And then that was a sort of a benefit to our buyers. Many of them wanted to go in there and they wanted to, yes, occupy the property, but sell some of the timber themselves.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea. Timber is a natural resource. And especially today with the prices where they are very high, it's so crazy. In some cases, you could sell the timber and literally recover the price you paid for the land and enjoy the land for free, or close to it.
Probably not in our case. We do sell the land for quite a bit, but in other cases, yes.
Yeah, it's different land, but it's in a different part of the country. But it was kind of fascinating to hear that idea. So what kind of margins do you typically, if you buy, I don't know, you buy 100 acres and then you subdivide into 10 tracts at 10 acres each. What do you typically pay for the whole thing? What can you sell them piecemeal?
Well, that would 100 acres. We would pay about $10,000 per acre, most likely. So it'd be in the deal for about $1 million. We would put probably $200,000 in that in improvements into that, and then we'd probably sell the ranchettes all combined for about 2.5 million.
So you double your money essentially.
Yes,
with improvement, with that additional the wells, the roads, whatever else you do, you're spending 20% on top of the cost, and that doubles the value of the whole endeavor.
Yes, well, that and selling on owner financing as well helps. We have a lot more interested buyers when we sell on owner financing, and in general, you can sell for, and this is subjective, but maybe 10 or 15% more if you sell on owner financing
versus cash.
And that would be true with houses. That's what we used to do. We used to buy and sell houses, and so we're seeing some of those same concepts when we moved over to land.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And generally, a cash buy you have to discount. Even for a real house, FHA buyer or VA buyer or USDA buyer, where they have little money down or no money down, they're willing to pay you typically top price, right? The same thing with land, except for can you get because it's rural land, can a buyer get a USDA loan, or one of these, I guess other loans, but USDA covers sort of rural areas, right?
So few of our buyers are going that route that I would have to ask somebody on my team whenever someone did take out a traditional loan, I would have to ask them what route they went. From what I understand, they were going to their local bank and getting a loan from there. But could they have gotten better terms by going a different route? Maybe so. But over 95% of the land that we sell on owner financing.
Gotcha. I mean, it makes sense. It's a good business, by the way. This is very fundamentally solid because it works. Like you said, the same thing with discount lots, guys. If somebody wants to buy a piece of land, they don't know where to find it, and they generally don't want to buy a big piece of land. So by offering them smaller tracts, you're meeting a market need for folks to buy the size that's good enough for them, and they're willing to pay more for the service, especially if you get a well on the property and do some
right. Well, get a well and bring in power, and
power, that's right.
and then offer financing. Those three things combined really make this model work.
So power, you gotta have. I guess you gotta pull in those lines, and it's. Are the power companies willing to do that, or it's your cost? You just basically take the power from their main, wherever they're running the line, and you bringing it over.
Well, it ends up costing us usually tens of thousands of dollars per project to bring in power. Some of that really just depends on how far of a trip it is going to be to bring it in. And our team deals with the counties to make that happen. And sometimes that can be a slow process. Sometimes it'll slow down our projects, but we've even if it's slowing them down too much, we've even started selling ranchettes on owner financing before the power is even there. And we're promising that power to our buyers, that power will come in soon thereafter.
Gotcha. So you're taking on a commitment, which makes sense. If there's
Yes.
a process, you can pre-market.
Yes.
Makes sense. Let's just talk a little bit about your funds. So how long has your fund been around? What has it done kind of historically? It's pretty much what you said, 10% to investors, right? That's how the fund operates. And it's distributable, what, quarterly, monthly?
Right now it's set up as a Rule 506B fund, which means it's available for friends and family, people I know or people who work for the general partner know. And so I'm more than happy to speak with anyone offline about that. After we get to know each other, I have to be careful about giving too many details about the fund. I can talk about the business all day long, but when it comes to the fund, I have to speak more about what historically has happened as opposed to any sort of projections. I definitely have to be careful about that. So historically, yes, the fund has been receiving, the investors have been receiving that 10% preferred return, 10.47% internal rate of return, with the fund's loans being secured by first liens against land and notes. Yes.
How big is the fund? What's the AUM?
We have $16 million under management right now. We just take it on as we need it. It's an evergreen fund. So it was closed for almost a year, and then it recently opened up and then closed again. So we just open and close as needed.
Very cool. Before we forget, how would folks get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out there? You had exactly the right message. It's a 506B. You have to have prior existing relationships. So for the record, you did not do any kind of promotion. You just basically, you need to establish that. I've been in this business for years and know the drill. So you
right.
promote the fund.
Yes, we just have to assume the SEC is always watching. So if anyone would like to reach out to me so we can get to know each other, my email address is doug@hawthornecapital.com. That's Doug, D-O-U-G, at Hawthorne, H-A-W-T-H-O-R-N-E, capital.com. I'd be happy to speak with you.
Very cool. Appreciate you sharing. What's the outlook? Let's just switch the subject. So what's the outlook? Where are we going? Well, what do you see happening with land prices in Texas in the upcoming months and years? Obviously, there's all kinds of migration happening from the Californias and New Yorks of the world into Dallas and Houston and Austin area. So Texas seems to be a great beneficiary of more business-friendly environment. Obviously, no state income tax. And so what are your thoughts?
Well, land values have already just about doubled at rural land values around Houston. So land that we used to be able to buy for $5,000 per acre, now we're paying $10,000 per acre.
In how much time?
In maybe 2 years. It all started shortly after the pandemic started in around March of 2020.
That's crazy. The prices have doubled in 2 years during the pandemic. I guess people wanted to get away from big cities and have their own neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, it's almost like big cities started to be seen in a more negative light as really centers of the virus and also centers of pandemic restrictions. But also, one reason land values have gone up so much as well is because people are worried about inflation with the government printing so much money. And so they're looking to park their money out in land. And so when we're going to buy these large, maybe tracts of 400, 800 acres, we're competing against now wealthy individuals who are looking just to buy it and hold it. And that was not the case pre-pandemic. So, but the good thing is that, so yes, we do pay more, but we also sell for a lot more per acre now. So our numbers are moved up, but they're still very large margins.
That's, yeah, brilliant commentary. I appreciate. Obviously, inflation continues to be a substantial risk factor. Well, it's not necessarily even a risk factor. It is a risk factor on one side, but it's also a blessing on the other side, because it with government printing money and weakening the currency, real estate continues to do well, and land. As much as land doesn't reproduce per se, it doesn't generate yield, you've come up with a way to generate yield by virtue of improving it and selling it and seller financing and creating yield to your investors. But the folks that are buying land, it is, like you said, maybe inflation hedge, or maybe it's a quality of life, it's a style, right? So.
Right. And these people that we've sold, the end buyers for these ranchettes, these blue collar people, the ones who bought, say, 3 years ago, they've really benefited from this appreciation in rural land values. So it feels good in a way just to know that, hey, these people that we're selling to are really on the winning side of things as well, not just with enjoying time with their families out there, but also benefiting substantially with their net worth.
Yeah, the appreciation has been great, and it's amazing to see that the land has done so well. Maybe it's because it's taxes on top of everything else. I don't think that the same level of appreciation would be true on other parts of the country, but it's uniquely strong in Texas, especially kind of where you're at. You see this continuing? I mean, obviously the trend is your friend.
I don't know, like, I don't necessarily think that land values rising have been good or bad for our business. They've been good it's been good in some ways and bad in some ways, but we've been doing land for about 6 years. And so a few of those years were pre-pandemic and the business was working very well. And then during the pandemic, it continued to work well. And here post-pandemic, it works well. So I've yet to see how these different market cycles could sort of throw us off kilter or affect us in an overly severe way. What we have seen through all market cycles is that there's an enormous demand for our product, regardless of what's going on with the economy. So we continue to supply that demand.
Yeah, I like this one really good thing about land. It does not depreciate. It's not like a building that's getting older and older.
Yeah.
It continues, it appreciates with inflation and the improvements you're making. It's the value added work that substantially enhances the value of the land. So it's a great asset class, and there's finite amount of it, right? If you think about it, as much as the United States is a huge country and Texas is a lot of land, at the same time, in comparison if you compare that to some other parts of real estate, and we love many asset classes. Obviously, we love multifamily and affordable housing and so on. But to build new product out there, it's expensive now. Cost of materials are going up. Go try to bring a new multifamily asset. You have to invest in a lot of money to bring the new product. Versus the land, there's really nothing for you to do other than buy well and just hold it.
Right. So maybe our wells used to cost $8,000 each. Now they cost $9,000 each. So yes, there's
inflation there too.
Not affected us that much in the big picture.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're absolutely right everywhere. But in comparison to versus some of the ground up projects, it's drastically better. It's to the point where we work a number of projects, and typically the value adds, incremental improvements are not as bad as the ground up, because you can renovate, you're not spending as much money. But here on land, you're still seeing higher costs, just a tiny bit. So your cost is $200,000 on $1 million invested, so it's 20%. So maybe it moved up. If it even moves up 10%, it moves from 200,000 to 220,000. But on a grand scale of things, your inflation is only 2% versus the 20,000 enhancement or an increase in the cost is not that bad on $1 million asset, right?
Correct. It's not. It's totally something we can handle.
Awesome. Once again, I appreciate your wisdom. All good things must come to an end. We're running out of time. Once again, give folks your contact information if they wanted to reach out, become an existing relationship. They can talk about the fund, or they're just interested in land investing. They may ask you some questions. Maybe they want to buy a lot from you.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Or some cocaine, right?
Yeah, or some cocoa, una cocoa. That's right.
Now I not only have to worry about the SEC, I've got to worry about the DEA.
Yes, tell them una cocoa.
Doug at hawthornecapital.com. Doug at hawthornecapital.com. And I just want to thank you, Mike, for having me on as a guest. But also, I'm just a huge fan of what you do. I'm a regular listener to your podcast. So keep doing what you do. Thank you so much.
I'm humbled and honored and really enjoy having. I think this was the most hilarious episode I've ever had. I don't think anybody ever came as close and as funny as you are. So I give you
thank you, Mike.
And thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Thank you for listening to the Big Mike Fund Podcast. To receive your copy of Mike's How to Choose a Smart Real Estate Fund book, head to BigMikeFund.com or visit Amazon and type Mike's slot dig. Keep listening and keep investing Big Mike style. See you on the next episode.